I want to talk about the student movement for gun safety, and let's start with some brand new poll numbers from CNN. Back in October, after the mass shooting in Las Vegas, 52% of the American people said they supported stricter gun laws. That number is now 70%. It is the highest level since December of 1993, after the gun control legislation known as the Brady Bill was signed into law by Bill Clinton. Among people in gun-owning households, I thought this was an interesting number, 57% want stricter gun laws.
It's amazing.
63% support a ban on high-capacity ammo magazines. That's up from 54% in October. And 57% support a ban on the manufacture, sale, and possession of semi-automatic weapons, such as the AR-15. That is up from 49% in October. Guys, we did not see these numbers move after Vegas. We haven't seen them this high in 25 years. What is going on here?
Everyone wants to say that this time is different because you want it to be, because you see these high school kids on TV in agony, begging the adults to do something. But these numbers bear out the fact that something is different. We have a chance here. And 6 in 10 Americans in the ABC poll think Congress and the president aren't doing enough to prevent mass shootings. 77% want more effective mental health screening. So there is a lot of political support that could get behind something smart that Congress puts forward. So we have to get the pressure on right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to remember, right? The NRA talks about their 5 million members or their 7 million members or whatever the number is. It's inflated. But regardless, that's still a tiny subset of the, 70 to 80 million gun-owning households in the country. And the vast majority of those people who are not signed up for what the NRA is or is becoming aren't on board for the kind of extremist maximalist position that the NRA has taken. So I think that's a reason for hope. I think the debate is changing. I don't know why. The only thing you can point to is the kids, because
they've kept it in the news.
They've kept it in the news.
They kept about issues.
Look, poll numbers jump all over the place. No one should get overly excited about this. But what it goes to show is the poll numbers haven't moved after other mass shootings as much. They moved a little bit after Sandy Hook and then it faded away. But they move, poll numbers move, and public opinion moves when people go out there and make the argument and keep things in the news, and people and people protest, and people go to the streets, and people boycott things. Sometimes, and I think this is a good lesson for Democratic politicians too, is because sometimes when you believe that nothing can happen legislatively or that the politics are too tough, you're just like, well, I might as well not talk about this because if I talk about it, it's like pushing a boulder up a hill anyway. Well, these kids don't give a fuck about that.
But they also have,
No, go ahead.
They also have something that Democratic politicians have not been able to wrest the microphone away from Donald Trump. Only
That's right.
Protests have, right? If you look at what has been effective over the past 2 years, it's been the protests, the women's marches. It has been protests at the airport. It has been these kids. So one lesson here is in a TV medium, in a presidency defined by television, protest is an effective way to make your point over the long haul, which is why I think kids have been more effective in making this argument than even people that are committed to this issue, like Chris Murphy and other senators, because they don't have the ability to keep the attention of the media. They don't.
Yeah, right. And you know what? The NRA knows that they're losing. And you know how you know that? Because they're sending out Dana Loesch and Wayne LaPierre to try to make the argument about the media. They're saying the mainstream media loves mass shootings. They're doing what Trump does, which is try to make it about elites and fake news and liberalism. It's a garbage, disgusting, disgraceful thing to say about the press, but we shouldn't get chased down that rabbit hole. We should keep talking about the need for common sense gun safety laws, because the data shows that if there are fewer guns out there, fewer people get shot. It sounds pretty simple, but people dispute this all the time.
Yeah, let's go to that point. The other enemy they have now is Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel.
Blue Lives Matter, John.
Whose department had received multiple calls about the shooter, and whose deputy, Scott Peterson, resigned after the revelation that he chose not to enter the school while the shooter was inside. Trump, our president this morning, said he'd have run in there even without a gun. Which seems like it would have been difficult with bone spurs. But
hey, Kindergarten Cop was a movie, okay? There was an actual cop there with a gun who didn't do anything because it's hard and scary and terrifying in these situations. The idea that we should arm teachers now as a panacea is so... I can't believe we're
the Republicans,
debating it.
They want to both sides this thing, and they want to say, Democrats are being so soft on this sheriff now, and no, there should be a full investigation of what the fuck happened in that sheriff's office, and anyone who was responsible or who didn't do their job, what they were supposed to be doing, obviously should be punished, and they should be asking themselves, instead of just figuring out exactly who to blame, they should figure, what the fuck do we need to do in the Broward County Sheriff's Office so that next time you get multiple calls about someone, this never happens again? Yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about fucking gun laws, too.
Yeah,
because
it's not
if the kid had a knife, we wouldn't have had that many lives lost. If the kid had maybe just a handgun, we wouldn't have had that many lives lost. So, like, give me a fucking break.
Stop it.
We're not going to... This isn't some issue we're now going to have to make it about, all about the Broward County Sheriff.
We should just be confident in our position. Yeah. It seems like there were way too many red flags. It seems like they screwed up a bunch. That guy didn't go in. It seems like the law enforcement screwed up in stopping this at every single step of the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems pretty clear that happened. What does that have to do with having millions and millions of AR-15s in circulation, in reach of troubled kids that exist in 100% of places in America every day?
Do you know how many armed security guards there were in the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and nothing happened, and they were all trying to respond to it? That's bullshit.
The hypocrisy of every time there is an unarmed African American shot, we chant Blue Lives Matter, and in this instance, because this guy came out and the sheriff came out and opposed the NRA's position, they are now pounding him. It is notable.
Yeah.
That said, yes, we should figure out what the hell went wrong and figure it out. But we should, on a federal level and even at a state level, we should focus on building the movement and infrastructure needed to pass gun control laws.
It's like the NRA can make their point that we need better mental health screening, even though they've never supported the background checks and what have you. They can make the point that this should have been stopped by this sheriff's department. Okay. How high do we want those stakes to be? Right. It's now, we have now said, okay, it is now on local law enforcement to find these kids. If they don't make a bomb threat anymore. They don't show up at school with a knife. No. They can kill dozens of people. That is the stakes we are putting on every single police department in the country.
Yeah, and it's completely unnecessary. So it's not just poll numbers that are moving. More than a dozen companies, most of the rental car companies, Delta, United, have now cut ties with the NRA, saying they would end the partnership programs where they offered certain discounts to NRA members. Conservatives are very upset about this, guys. Republicans are very upset. They say, what if companies started boycotting Planned Parenthood? What would you do? And also, some analysts, reporters have questioned this. I saw Andrew Kaczynski, who's an excellent reporter on CNN, say, I don't know if this will have the intended effect those on the left want. The campaign is to make the NRA toxic to corporations, but it will also probably harden the views of millions of law-abiding gun owners who see the NRA as their voice.
Seem pretty hardened, those views.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's a reflection of the fact that in 2016, people care about corporate values. And I personally think that that's a good thing. Corporations as soulless money vacuums hasn't necessarily worked out for us over time. There may be instances where there's a boycott that I don't love, but this is just a reflection of where consumers are. And it's also, I think it's useful to show the NRA isn't all powerful and to be able to pick these corporations off one by one and get them to walk away from it. And funny to watch, huffy conservatives who mock Democrats for being snowflakes get upset that they have to switch from United to Delta. and give me a break.
Also, it's about what the NRA has turned into too. It is not a gun fellowship group, as Dana Loesch called it on Twitter.
Right.
It is. Look at their fucking ads. Go to NRA TV.
They're racist.
They are the most. It's not even good to call them partisan. They are inciting. They're trying to incite violence. They are trying to make one half of America hate the other half of America and say to people, because you hate them so much, because those people hate you so much and are coming after you, Hollywood, liberals, Barack Obama, all the rest of them, you should probably buy some guns because, by the way, the gun manufacturers are who we really work for.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do. That's what they are. Let's be honest about it.
Also
Why would you want to be associated with that if you're a company?
It's also about separating the facts and substance of the debate over gun control from gun control measures. Mm-hmm. If a debate is about the facts and substance of gun ownership and gun control, there's quite reasonable compromises you can reach that people can have arsenals in their homes and continue to enjoy hunting and shooting and all the ways in which they enjoy using guns while putting in some common sense reforms. That wouldn't be seen as a defeat for them. Right. But they need to make every single act of gun control a partisan defeat. That's something that is that attacks their kind of token. That's why they need to make sure AR-15s are kept in circulation, because now it's not just about sort of the balance between freedom and responsibility. It's about this thing as a symbol of freedom. That's the first thing. The second thing is, those conservatives, I think, didn't really articulate why they were bothered by the fact that the NRA was losing these discounts, right? Basically the equivalent of like AAA discounts. It's not that big a deal.
They don't matter.
They don't really matter. I also love these guys, these conservatives on Twitter, like just columnists in DC who have the same capacity for firing guns as like I do for bobsledding, right? They don't have any connection to this, but they want to be mad about it because it's basically saying the NRA isn't a normal group anymore. That there's a certain point at which I don't mind if this is about Planned Parenthood and has partnerships with airlines. Some conservatives groups have partnerships with corporations. I don't have a problem with that. What this is saying is the NRA no longer deserves to be treated like a respectable organization that can have discounts and little promotions with restaurants and what have you, because their behavior now crosses a line into something that is completely unacceptable to our society.
Yeah.
And that is the part that they can't accept.
They go out there, they say that the media loves mass shootings. They say, that it's absurd. They're not a fucking they're not even a lobbying organization anymore.
And their solution to the problem of 17 kids getting shot is one designed to have hundreds of thousands of more guns purchased to arm teachers. It's the maximalist, cynical position, and we should just call it for what it is.
And also, by the way, that was also one of those dumb debates. Not half the people railing about this had no idea that there were NRA discounts.
Right,
None of us did. Right. Nobody knew there were NRA discounts at Hertz Rent-A-Car. And then half the NRA members had no idea there was a discount at Hertz Rent-A-Car. And now these guys are on Twitter being like, well, I guess I'll have to go to Enterprise now. So I will never. Oh, you know what I want to also ask these conservatives about these boycotts that they've declared on Twitter? What do you keep a list? Bull fucking shit. 2 years from now, you're going to remember that you tweeted during this thing? Give me a break. Nobody's going to remember any of this. Nobody, the number of people, if people were boycotting to the extent they claim to be boycotting on Twitter, the economy would grind to a halt. We'd be trading in oranges.
Sean Hannity throwing the Keurig out the window. So where else can we apply pressure? People are trying to pressure Amazon, Apple TV, and other video streaming sources and platforms to stop carrying NRA TV. Great. Keep doing it. Again, go watch the fucking ads with Dana Loesch and some of the other ones. They're scary as hell. And where else can we apply pressure? Some people have talked about banks. Bank of America has said that they're going to look at their relationships with some gun manufacturers. They said it in the most careful corporate PR way, so who knows what will happen there. And Dan talked about this on Thursday pods. Dan talked about this on Thursday's pod. Gun manufacturers themselves. I mean, the big enemy here is not, because the NRA ultimately is not representing gun owners. They are representing gun manufacturers. They want to try to sell more guns, and it is gun manufacturers that we should be putting pressure on, and that we should try to cut off their sources of funding and all the other stuff. That's the big goal.
Quick shout out to Think Progress and Sleeping Giants, who've done incredible work calling out these companies and starting movements to get people to pressure them. Yeah. Keep it up.
Let's talk about legislation. So in Florida, Rick Scott wants to pass a law raising the minimum age to buy any firearm from 18 to 21, strengthen rules to keep weapons away from people with mental health problems, domestic abusers, and stalkers. Prospects of this, he is disagreeing with the legislature in Florida over a few things. Scott doesn't want a 3-day waiting period. The legislature does. Scott doesn't want to arm teachers. Broke from Trump on this. The legislature does. So the plan isn't enough, but it breaks from the NRA and Trump. Trump and the Republican Congress, meanwhile, are most likely to consider the Cornyn and Murphy bill that we've talked about that gives states incentives to submit criminal conviction records to the federal background check system.
Cool.
Will any of this get done, guys?
I don't think we know. I think the future isn't written. I hope so. I think it is possible. I just want one point on these the arming teachers thing. I don't think there's been an issue like this in a very long time where it's one of those things where everybody stops in their tracks and goes, wait, this is crazy.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What do you mean armed teachers? Because it's like one of those things I think that can shake even hardened partisans out of their kind of whatever, their foxholes. People just, what do you mean? My kid's teacher's gonna have a gun in the classroom? I think that that
polling
clicks
on this
for people
is a little disconcerting.
I am done. I am very skeptical at this point. We have to be so skeptical about policy polling because I really believe that the number of people answering the phones are the kind of people that are going to take their side too. So I just that was the one thing. The other thing just is one sign of hope is Marco Rubio in that town hall changing his mind on the fly, because Marco Rubio doesn't do anything, unless Marco Rubio believes it's in his political interest. So I think Marco Rubio has his finger in the wind, and he hears high-capacity magazines. He thinks about raising the age. He thinks about background checks, and I think his shift represents where Republicans are going to be.
You know, it's interesting that Florida is taking some of these steps, because there's an amazing piece in the New Yorker this week about the NRA's chief lobbyist in Florida. And this person is one of the most powerful individuals in the entire state of Florida, literally writing legislation for lawmakers, pushing massive contributions towards independent expenditures. And Florida has become a petri dish where concealed carry or stand your ground laws are first passed, and then they're moved to different states on a state level, which is a lot easier than creating new federal laws. So if we can, show that the NRA is not invincible in Florida, of all places, where there's a crazy Republican legislature, I think that could benefit in ways and ripple out over time in ways that aren't totally apparent right now.
Yeah, no, I am for all of these sort of like half measures, incremental measures passing. We should push for them because, you build off small victories. I do think we should be, like the gun safety movement should be clear on a few of the big goals that we want, or Democrats running for office, right? Sure. It's ban semi-automatic weapons, bring back the assault weapons ban.
Yep.
Universal background checks, if not a gun license. Some states you have to get a gun license, which is an even more extensive background check, and it's more stringent. And then a ban on high-capacity ammo. 3 things: assault weapons ban, high-capacity ammo, gun licenses. And those are big, significant gun measures. And maybe we don't get those for 10 years, but maybe we start in the states. Like you said, maybe the states become laboratories for if we win back some of these governorships in 2018 and we win back some state legislatures and we start passing them there. So I think we need to keep these like a big couple policy initiatives as a North Star here that we keep pushing for.
Also, everywhere you pass them, they save lives.
Right.
Every time.
And then you have that evidence.
Yeah, every single time. That's happened in Connecticut after Sandy Hook. We see the evidence. They always point to Chicago, the violence in Chicago, the toughest gun laws. Well, no one intellectually honest takes that seriously, because the guns come from across state lines in Indiana where they don't have strict gun laws.
Right.
We know what's going on here. We know that gun control works because we're the only country with our economic success that deals with this problem. Yeah. We are alone in the world facing this.
Yeah, and the NRA is not invincible. In 2016, they won 73% of the time. In 2008, they won 44% of the time when Barack Obama was elected president, because they rise and fall with the general political winds too. And with the trends we're seeing in these suburban areas, with the views on guns, really dovetail nicely with places where Democrats could pick up key wins. So we should kick the shit out of them this cycle, and that's the best way we get the gun laws we want.
Democrats should not be afraid of this issue.
Fight it.
Look at that number of gun-owning households and the number of people who want stricter gun laws.